folks, welcome to Race Matters. My name's Eddie Carson, and you're listening to WJOPLP Newburyport, Joppa Radio 96.3 FM. And like every week, every other week, every month, every whatever you want to call it, I appreciate y'all chiming into the Soul Brother. And I'm really excited about the show tonight because I'm going to tell you, I got this awesome sister who's joining me tonight. And she's going to really entertain us and educate us. Better yet, she's going to educate me because that's, you're laughing here. I see the grin and everything here. I'm gonna welcome you to the mic to introduce yourself. Go for it.
Hi, Eddie. Thanks for having me. I'm Jennifer Rocco Runnion. I'm a fourth generation Newburyporter. Ran for state rep in 2018, and I'm just trying to keep into good trouble.
Good trouble. So that's become kind of a popular phrase between us in many ways too, right?
Yes.
So what does it mean to be a fourth generation person from Newburyport? Help me understand that.
So I guess it depends on where you land, right? So my parents, my dad's mom and dad and his mom and dad, great grandparents, lived in Newburyport. They came here as Italian immigrants. And it was a different time and place. Newburyport was a different time and place in the 20s and 30s and 40s than it is today.
Absolutely. So, and I got to ask you this, right? So as we delve into the show, we're going to talk a lot about Newburyport. We're going to keep it local. We may extend to the national conversation because, again, nothing happens at the local level that doesn't happen at the national level.
I agree.
And, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to tell you this right now because, as my guest on Race Matters, I think it's really important for me to ask this question. Mm-hmm. On a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being super pumped, 0 being I just don't know, right? Where would you say Newburyport, Amesbury, this whole area is on that scale of 0 to 10, 10 being super high? And 10, right, is being highly optimistic. And just so you know, Jennifer, because again, you may not know this, but I'm not an optimistic person. I was optimistic.
You have mentioned that too.
No, I've mentioned that. I'm not. I was optimistic when I was in high school. That was a long time ago. Now, I'm just hopeful. So here we go. 0 to 10.
5.
Okay,
is that
5.
the safe space?
Yeah, it's funny. 5 is. I should take 5 off the board. You get 0 to 4 and 6 to 10.
4.
All right, 4 is where we're at. So we're going to talk about Newburyport, and we're going to talk about the ways in which Newburyport's actually progressing and moving in the right direction, right? The things that we like and the things that we're seeing. But we're also going to delve into a conversation about what are those things that are prohibiting the absolute progress, especially when we talk about notions of radical love here. Mm-hmm. Before we move on, I do have to say this because it's popped up quite a bit, and I think it's important for folks to know this. Here at Race Matters, we believe in radical love. We believe in radical love in terms of how we love all folks who love other people in so many ways. And I just want to say here, one, I want to go out and I want to be very, very clear about the ways in which I condemn anti-Semitism and my problems with anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is just another form of white supremacy. This past week we've seen a lot of national conversations about Kanye West. And I just got to be honest with you. I've been done with Kanye West for a long time. I have no space nor time for Kanye. A little disappointed in, what was that basketball player name? Oh, Kyrie Irving. I think he used to play for the Boston Celtics, right?
I have a tweet. If you go back and look at my tweets now, not that we're on Twitter anymore, now that Elon Musk owns it, but
it's time to get off. Elon Musk is doing that. It's time to get off Twitter here.
But Kyrie is always been disappointing to me.
He's kind of a disappointing human being, right? Kyrie's about Kyrie, no matter what. Did you hear the recent thing he said? That was so he's kind of propagating this movie in his book, and I want to say the title is like Negroes to Hebrews, and it has a lot of tropes aimed at Jewish people. And I sat there and I was disturbed by the fact that he said that. The other thing I think I was pretty disturbed about too is there's this basketball player and I listen at times to talk radio. I don't always agree with them. But I'm just going to give a shout out to whoever the brother was on 98.5 who said, me tell you the problem I had with Jaylen Brown. So the former coach, Mdoka, I can't, is that his name? Mdoka or something?
He's a good coach.
Yeah, but he's problematic in some ways. And so one of the elements that happened, of course, is the fact that...
But who's hiring him? The Nets?
Right. So you have the Nets, the Nets who are hiring him and everything. And so Jaylen Brown said, what did he say? He said, I'm happy because it's important to see a black man get this chance and blah, 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 blah. I agree, right? We know the oppression of black folks and all of that. But much to what this person said, Jaylen, he can't take it both ways in terms of social justice and everything too, especially for the fact that he has not fully separated himself in the ways that I want him to separate himself from Kanye West and the whole Kyrie Irving. And then, I don't know if you saw this or not. I don't watch college football or sports or anything. You're too busy for that stuff.
I'm basketball all the time.
You're basketball?
That's it, though.
College basketball?
Well, my nephew plays for Assumption.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. Well, maybe I need to tune in and pay attention to them a little bit. And so... It was this past weekend. There was a college football game, and between University of Georgia and I don't know some other school. University of Florida. A white supremacist group. If you haven't heard this yet, a white supremacist group put up a flag talking about how correct and right Kanye West is. They talked about how you've got to watch out for the Jews and the problem of Jewish people. And they're hanging this up at this football game. And I sat there and I thought, you can't support Kanye because Kanye supports anti-Semitism. And I love the fact that people are disavowing him and are stepping away. Kyrie Irving is problematic, and you know what? If I were the owner of the Nets, I'm just sitting there and I'm going to send a real social justice message by saying goodbye.
Send it.
But that's what should happen, right? The brother's problematic.
Kanye West has a mental illness.
So that's interesting. I was talking to some students about this the other day.
And we're elevating him as we should not be elevating him to the level we are.
No, and I don't even know where to start with this. I sit there. No, I'm wrestling through this right now because a student of mine said, "Where are his people? Yeah. Where are the folks who are probably exploiting him and making a bunch of money to give him advice and protect him?" Which is sad that a grown man needs a posse of folks to be his mouthpiece and all of that. To say, you have just destroyed everything you've worked for. Mm-hmm. But the reality, of course, too, is the truth comes out. Mel Gibson. I don't know if you know this or not. He did this show with Danny Glover, I think it was, Lethal Weapon. Mm-hmm. And it was a movie back in the, late 80s and 90s. And black folks loved the show. Black folks adopted Mel Gibson, and we did this. All right? Mel Gibson is now one of us. And then he gets drunk, and then all the racist, sexist, anti-Semitic stuff comes out, and it just kind of buries him at that particular point. I think that's where Kanye is.
Okay. I see the parallels.
Yeah? Is that a stretch for me here?
I mean, no. I see the parallels. I think that both of them were at the top of their game, right? Sort of when they fell, right? This is where they always fall.
Right. They get to that apex and they're like, you know what? I don't know what else to do. And so I'm just going to train wreck my future and my career. I'm just going to blow it up. It is interesting, too, because it always starts with the reality of folks, right? Their sexist, their homophobia, their transphobia, their sexist, racist behavior.
Well, Mel Gibson was Passion of the Christ.
I forgot about Passion of the Christ. Did you ever watch that?
I did.
So, confession, I could not bring myself to go see it.
It was very white.
Very white.
You know, I
Well,
mean,
Jesus becomes white.
Jesus is white to a lot of Christians, right? He's not white, people.
Oh, and it's interesting too, and I've said this. I wonder if people's thought the fact that Jesus is actually in many ways, right, both Jewish and Palestinian. And we think about those, right? And then the turmoil that happens here. So, I'm sitting there and I'm going off on this stuff, but I could not start this show off without addressing those topics that's there, because those are things we have to think about.
Yeah.
So Jennifer, you're fourth generation. Mm-hmm. A person from Newburyport. Mm-hmm. And tell me, what are the ways in which you've seen Newburyport change during your time period here? And it could be what you think are good things, bad things, but we'll delve into this. We have plenty of time for that.
Well, I think it's so interesting because it's also the periods of time where you see life, right? And how you experience life as you're growing up. And for me, Newburyport was sort of this middle class, lower middle class, hardworking, family town, right? There was the High Street and the Low Street where my parents lived.
Low Street?
We lived on Low Street.
Is that, and so Low Street, is this supposed to mean anything? That is low, high, some kind of class orientation?
In my mind, it meant.
Oh, in your mind, it
I don't
meant
know
something?
if it really meant. I think that High Street, I think it did have that connotation. Like you drive down High Street, you see
all the bigger houses and everything.
Big houses But Low Street is what built Newburyport to what it is, right? So sort of that urban renewal period of time, the time when I was growing up here, it was sort of this bucolic town where everybody knew each other. But I wasn't allowed to go beyond State Street. Anything beyond State Street south was ex-nay territory.
But why?
Because that was the poor section of town at the time, which is sort of crazy.
Interesting.
It's not anymore. But so I could go as far as State Street. I could go downtown Newburyport. I could walk from my parents' house. But even before then, so it was my grandparents who grew up above Nick's Pizza on Merrimack Street. They had an apartment up there, and that's where they first moved in together. And my great-grandfather, he ran a small little spaghetti house, which was during Prohibition, and sold alcohol.
Ooh,
they had code words.
Code words. Oh, those what do they call them? Little speakeasy places. And everything that existed.
And here they called them spaghetti houses because they were Italians that were running them, right? So they called them spaghetti houses. Or Bossy Gillis in his asbestos newspaper called them the spaghetti house.
This is new stuff for me. The spaghetti house, whatever. This is new language.
I have the newspaper. It's from like 1929, 1930. Yeah.
Ooh. So, in thinking about you're being a fourth generation and seeing the changes that's happened here. Mm-hmm. I mean, we could clearly say that Newburyport is a overwhelmingly predominantly white community. I recently looked at the census and the statistics, and I want to say it's 96%. Or something like that, and folks can always check that for me.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm in Amesbury, and I think it's maybe 1% or 2% better than that, but not much, right? So, I think growing up, my sister and I had this conversation today. There was 1 or 2 black families that went to school. She said there were 2 black kids in my school, but they were brother and sister.
So there you go, right there.
One family.
But in terms of time, right? One of the things that's happened is that Massachusetts has this national reputation for being a very liberal state. Mm-hmm. And it is interesting, too, because, me being a soul brother from the Deep South, the natural assumption, and I'm a progressive person, is people told me, oh, you're going to love it there. It's going to be a haven for you and all of those things. But then I think I told you this. I was surprised when I got here to find out that there was actually a bit of I don't know if it's conservative or traditional, maybe it's tied into wealth or whiteness. I don't know what it is, but it exists here in Newburyport that makes people who don't have a certain level of socioeconomic status or who of a certain shade of black or brown feel wholly welcome into all communities. Has that been your outlook, particularly in your communities growing up here?
So I'm white, Eddie. So it's interesting to hear you as a black man coming into the community. So you did not feel like it was a haven for you when you got here?
No, I mean, that's a good question. Here's what I'll say. I will say that people have been open to me, right? I have not been treated in a disrespectful way during my time here in Newburyport. There have been other communities throughout the state that's been problematic. I had lunch with someone today, and I'll tell you this. This individual, I won't name him, he's super awesome. And, one of his former students, he's pretty much adopted, and this student is a person of color. So this person, who's a person of color, graduates college, has a great job. My colleague was telling me that how much more money he makes recently out of college than he does, and I was just sitting there feeling depressed because that means I know how much more money he makes than I make, right? And so he and another student of color decide that they want to get their own apartment in Boston. And in doing so, in 3 tries, they kept being rejected. And it took this white guy, my friend, this white guy whom I had lunch with, to have to sign off and vouch for folks who are 23 years old in order for them to get an apartment. And a lot of this is predicated on the color of their skin. And so I've not experienced anything to that extent in Newburyport. What I have experienced, which is always interesting, and there are reasons why, and then some of it may not be racially motivated, so I want to point that out, is, I get a lot of stares. I get a lot of folks, I can be sitting at a dinner table. I'm surprised this didn't happen to us, where folks will just walk up to me and assume they know me or are curious about me. Like I'm some kind of exotic.
I know you somehow.
Right.
You look familiar.
You look familiar.
Oh, my kids get that all the time.
Right. So tell us about your kids, and if you're comfortable with this, your family dynamic and your kids and their experience.
Yeah. So I have 4 children. I have a son, a biological son, but I have 3 adopted children. One's from Ethiopia, one's from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the other one is a multiracial child from Las Vegas. She's my Vegas baby. I always say that to her. And she's the Spitfire that you know.
Oh, I do know her. Absolutely.
Yes. And so, we had a lot of that, right? So in a way, it was a lot of what on the surface appeared positive. People come out, oh, your hair, and just touching her head. And I'm looking at this going, who no one's ever touched my head like that.
Right.
Why do you feel it's okay to touch my kid's head? And until they were old enough to say, no, don't touch my hair, because I made sure that they knew it was okay to say no to that. That's a violation. But it was sort of this weird dynamic, right? So this is positive. They're like, oh, your hair's so beautiful, but I'm going to touch it anyway.
It's exotic. It's different.
It's different. And oh my gosh, where are you from?
Oh, right. You always got to get a where you're from question, that curiosity and essentially that asks the question of why are you here?
And that was always the feeling I got. Sometimes it was people just curiosity, because they were different. There's not a lot of Black and BIPOC people in our community. And so for so long, I tolerated it, right? I felt like, okay, well, they're going to just get to know my kids and get to know who they are as people. And no, it then became weird, like what you were just saying, okay, I know you from somewhere, or you're so different, or you're so this and that. No, she's actually just a normal teenage kid.
Right. Trying to spend her time. So, with that being the case, how do your kids feel in the community? Amesbury, Newburyport, school. I won't name names, but you feel free to share whatever you want. Do they feel a couple things? Do they feel safe? Do they feel invited? Do they feel like any other kid in this community?
No. Well, they're not treated like any other kid in this community. So I don't think it is. I think it's different for them. And so their experience on I can almost say weekly basis, there is some comment, some racial undertone going on all the time in their life, and they're so hyper aware of their surroundings, right? There's not a lot of people who look like them. There are not people in power around here that look like them, right? There are not role models who are the color that they are. I have to seek those people out for them so they have somebody to look up to, right? And that's sort of, how we kind of got to meet. And Blue was like, Blue just, she loves you because I make her watch Race Matters.
I love it. I love it. No, and she's super awesome.
But no, to be serious, Eddie, no, it's not the same for my kids. My kids, my daughter, some boy in her class said, "You look like you have a poop emoji on your head." She wore her hair natural that day, and she has not worn her hair natural to school since that day.
So I'll say to your daughter, I hope she will wear her hair natural tomorrow and every other day, because right at her age, she's still trying to, kids of color, the thing that I've encountered is that they want to just have friends. They want to engage, right? They recognize their identity, their racial makeup, but yet they don't want to be put to the sides or to the margin. They just want to go out on the playground and then have fun and engage in different ways too. And that is just seems like that dynamic is a bit of a strife.
She's been on the playground and said, no, brown people can't play on this playground.
You've heard that.
Yes.
She's heard that.
She's heard that. No, this game is not for people with the color of your skin.
So here's a question for you, right? In this community, what are the things you would share to families who do not have children of color about the experience of children of color and the things maybe they could start thinking about and educating their own family or themselves about how do we engage with differences?
Right. So this was sort of our conversation at dinner, right? So it's, when you gave your Garrison talk at the church in the South End, I heard a lot of questions afterwards or a lot of comments afterwards about this is happening in Georgia, or this is happening in Alabama, or this is happening in Texas, when this stuff is happening in our communities. So I need you to turn around. All of our, anybody who's an ally or calls himself an ally, considers themselves an ally, wants to do good in the world, turn around and look inward at your own community, right? And look for what's happening here. Ask me. Ask. What's going on? How does your child feel? Is your child welcome here? Because once I started asking that question of other parents, and we formed a group, right? So there's a bunch of us now who we can rely on, who we can trust, who we can talk to, who understands and gets what our kids are going through on a daily basis. And honestly, as I said to you at dinner, the motivation for me to run for office was sitting on the couch and hearing the President of the United States.
What president was that?
Trump.
There you go.
President Trump. It's 2016. And I was sitting on the couch with my girls, and he referred to African countries as S-hole countries. I don't think I can say the real word on radio, and I don't want to get you in trouble. And my oldest daughter just started crying. And I turned and looked at her and I go, oh my God, this is the president of her country. This is her country. And he's calling where she came from asshole countries. Go back to where you came from. And for me, it was that awakening moment, that come to Jesus moment that you and I were talking about, that we've had several times in our lives, right? Like you have those come to Jesus moments all the time in life. That I was like, I have to bridge that gap for my white friends who don't understand what these kids are going through, right? Because I don't understand what my kids go through. I see it every day. I still don't get it, right? I'm not in their shoes. I don't pretend to walk in their shoes. But I see it, and my heart as a parent hurts, and I want other people in our community to be aware of that and to know that these children experience this daily here. Amesbury, Newburyport, Salisbury, you name it. Go out to Byfield, West Newbury. It's happening all around us. That we need to be we need to step out of our comfort zones all the time. And
so, with that in mind and everything, do you one of the things you mentioned earlier is that your kids, right, who are BIPOC, which stands for Black Indigenous People of Color. For folks, not everyone knows what BIPOC means, right? They don't see people like them in this community whatsoever. How is that troubling? What do you think that and you may not have an answer for this, and it's a complicated question, but what do you think those things are in which they can see people in leadership roles who have a voice, who are making decisions, who are engaging, that look like them?
Well, so example I can give you recently. So there was all of our communities profess to be diverse, equity, inclusion. That's like the phrase that we're all using to. Oh yes, we have DEI, we have this, we have that. But where are you behind those words, right? So, example is Newburyport recently. There was a Black man, super qualified.
I heard about this. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Okay,
Go ahead.
so he ran. School committee seat became open, and he was going to step up, right? A Black man in Newburyport stepping up to the school committee, and he didn't get the job, like last minute. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, what? Like, what? Where are all the DEI stuff you're talking about on a daily basis? And you're speaking at this event and that event about diversifying equity. You need to have a seat at the table in order to have equity. So if you're not going to give them the seat at the table, this is a Navy officer, right? Works for USAID. It handles multiple issues on food insecurity around the globe. I mean, we're not talking about some. So, and even then, it doesn't matter, right? It's somebody who's stepping up, whose children who go to the school systems.
Well, because representation does matter.
Representation matters, and that was what my point was at dinner tonight, right? So representation matters. It matters to my kids. They need to see Black men, brown women in positions of power with a seat at the table, so they know they can get there too. Right, and they don't see that here. There's nowhere to be seen.
So, do you think that this area here, all the towns, the communities here, do you believe that there's a sense of performative activism that's happening, or is there something else?
So I think people have good hearts. I truly believe in the activists in our community. There are people who want to do the right thing, to do good, but they don't want to step out of their comfort zone, right? So as soon as it gets a little hairy, they're out. They're out. I'm too tired. I can't handle this. I can't stay any longer. It was the event I'm talking about at the CRE
Yes.
event. I mean, there was literally 5 people left on the sidewalk, knowing you were inside this building with 3 police cars outside, I wasn't leaving, and I wasn't gonna leave because I had to demonstrate to my daughter who was there that you don't leave. You wait until he's out safe. We make sure he gets to his car. We make sure you have to stay. And so I'm just asking that people think about that next level of activism, right? So be an activist, but then stay. Don't go.
So, I mean, you say that, and one of the things that's come up on the show before and everything too is, right, we talk about some of the challenges of people who profess some type of ideological disposition that is, very conservative, that's problematic for, Black folks, brown folks, women, queer folks, all of that. Mm-hmm. But yet, the perception, I'll start there, of a community like Newburyport, right, is that it is a very progressive, predominantly white, right, community. It sounds like you push back on that a little bit.
I do push back on that because I have multiple friends in Lawrence who refer to Newburyport as the sundown town.
Interesting. So I got to be honest. So I need you to define a sundown town for folks who don't know what that is.
Okay, so it has double meanings, but a sundown town, in the way that they were describing it to me, is you don't stay there after sundown.
If you're a person of color.
If you're a person of color,
Absolutely.
you're out.
You're out.
You don't want to be in that town. And I've had several of my friends who live in Lawrence, who Puerto Rican, Dominican Republic, who will not come to Newburyport if the sun is down.
There is, I can't remember the name of the sociologist, but he published a book, I want to say back in 2010, a fantastic book, and it's titled Sundown Towns, right? And he talks about how you have these communities that are, essentially white communities, but yet they've created these structures, these barriers in place that prohibits absolute diversity, particularly in terms of people of color living in those communities. That's there, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember his name, but all you got to do is Google the book Sundown Towns. Yeah, and it pops up and everything too. So
housing is a barrier here in town.
So that has come up a couple of times too. So here's a question, right? And I've heard this from other folks as I've brought it up, that I'm not wholly convinced that this area wants to diversify, because not only from a racial lens, but a socio-economic lens too, that there's not enough work being done to create affordable housing within a community. I've even had some folks in the community tell me, well, come on, Eddie. I mean, people worry about the devaluing of property taxes, about the community and the demographics of the community changing. Those are some pretty strong words. Is there some semblance of truth to that?
Well, my parents, Eddie, bought their house in Newburyport in 1965 or 66. God, sorry, Mom, I don't remember what year you got married. But the house was $15,000. That would have been affordable to anybody at the time, as long as they had access to bank loans or whatever they needed in order to get that. It's just become outrageous, right? So the people like my parents who still live in this town, if my parents didn't pay off their house, they couldn't live here.
Yeah.
They couldn't continue to live in the town that they've known their whole life. And I think that there's a whole segment of the population here in Newburyport that feel that, right? So there's a whole bunch of people who have lived here for a very long time, and they can't afford to stay. They can't afford to stay. I can't afford to live in Newburyport.
Well, it's interesting. So it's interesting you bring that up, because you're fourth generation, and you spend a lot of time in Newburyport, but you have to live in another town.
I live in Amesbury, which has its own problems with taxes, right? Which makes up for the cost of housing. But to go and find a house in Newburyport right now, there's like 5 houses on the market, right? You can't find a house. So yeah, that's a barrier. Like, you're talking about barriers for people of color. Why are we making it? What's so welcoming about Newburyport?
I mean, that's fair. So here's what I don't know, but I think I do know, because I think I sat down and I looked it up, and I want to say this disclaimer, right?
Okay.
That I could be completely wrong. Feel free to email me or tell me I'm wrong. There's not one faculty of color at the high school.
I believe it.
And I believe I'm right. I could be wrong. And so this idea, of course, that if you're a person of color, right, you're not going to see yourself in the front of the room. I don't know about some of the other schools, at the middle school and the elementary school levels as well, but do kids of color, but not even kids of color, right? But white kids,
Yes.
white kids need to see, educated, engaging folks in front of them who are teaching them, right? Who they can connect with, who don't look like them. So,
as much as our kids need to see themselves in that leadership position,
right,
white kids need to see not themselves in that position.
So, but the challenge, of course, right, when we think about this, whether or not Newburyport in this area is progressive or not, the question that people would bring up would be things like, well, you know what? What do you want us to do about this? It's difficult. It's a market. We exist under capitalism, and whatever that means. We live in this commodified community in which we can't attract people. How are we going to attract people of color? I mean, I'll say this: no one's reached out to me and offered me a job anytime soon. And I don't know who's listening, but I always listen. and of course, the offer's got to be nice in order for me to be able to afford to be here and everything too.
I mean, honestly, for anybody who lives in Newburyport, the offer better be nice.
Be pretty good in order to come here.
True. But no, I don't know what we're this is where I get hung up, right? So it's like, what do we do? And this is what I was talking to you at dinner about. I never feel like I'm doing enough, Eddie.
Right.
Right? Like, I never feel like I can do enough. So what's the next thing I have to be doing so that I can have a community for my children that is diverse, that is different, and I'm not just talking about color, right? We're talking about LGBTQ, we're talking about class, we're talking all of those things. We don't exist together. Right?
So you mentioned you don't feel like you're doing enough, right?
Yeah, right.
What are some of the things that you have done, if you don't mind sharing? And you don't have to share everything. You maybe give an example, but something that you're hoping that may change the fabric of the community.
It's such a hard question for me because I don't like.
And you don't right, and I know the answers to this question, so you don't have to answer this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to. I don't know. I don't know. I get tongue-tied when it comes to that because I'm not bragging about. There's nothing to brag about. I don't feel like I should be bragging about anything or talking about anything special that I've done because honestly, we all need to be doing this work together. It's that collective. It's my great uncle who organized during the Bread and Roses strike, right? He was the organizer of the Italians, but the Italians weren't going to change labor laws by themselves. They needed to collectively work with the Russians, the Spanish people, whoever, all of the people who spoke 12 different languages during the Bread and Roses strike. If it wasn't all of them working together and having organizers, nothing would have changed. So for me, it's this idea of sort of containing our collective activism and how do we move our community forward.
So what do you think, right, is needed, or what do you think maybe the hesitation for people to kind of coalesce in a way around these things in order to really move a community forward? Do you think it's just people are busy? Is it fear? Is it not of interest? I mean, we could probably go on and on and on. I'm sure you have some thoughts on what may be the reason.
I think it's all of those things. I think fear is a big one, right? People don't want to mess up. People don't want to make a mistake. And do you know how many mistakes I've made during this journey of raising black women and girls in this environment? I've made a million mistakes. I make a million mistakes a day. But I have to, at some point, I have to say to myself, I can't be afraid to make mistakes. I just have to do it. And you have to get out there and you have to be brave, right?
Yes.
And you have to just have a little bit of courage. You don't have to have a lot. You just have to have enough to want to change the condition that we're all living in, right? The condition for everyone, not just for you, not just what's good for you, because if that were the case, back during the Bread and Roses strike, which you and I were talking about, none of the labor laws would have changed.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It would not have changed. So it has to come from everyone. It can't just come from the people of color because it's not a loud enough voice. We need white people, black people, brown people, indigenous people.
So, I mean, I'm glad you pointed that out because one of the things that I hear all too often is that that people of color, right, they feel like the responsibility falls on them to have to drive and generate change, and they're frequently looking for white allies, white co-conspirators, white people to kind of step up. So I'm going to ask you this, right? You can answer this. You don't have to mention names or anything, and maybe we'll stay away from names. But are there folks doing that work here in this community?
There are definitely co-conspirators here that I think are real. Reverend Rebecca Bryan is one, right?
I'm a fan.
I'm a fan.
I'm a fan.
Right? She's someone who steps outside of her comfort zone. Paula Etsy.
Yes.
Women's Huddle. Paula Etsy Gallery. she steps out of her comfort zone. She's not afraid to learn. Wait, that's the thing. It's not about speaking out. It's about learning. It's about not being afraid to learn, not being afraid to know that you're always a learner, a lifelong learner. So Paula is another one that comes to mind. But then if we're going to, as I said to you, I look for the black and brown women, for my girls. Bria Gadsden from the Merrimack Valley Black and Brown Voices. She's a co-founder of this group.
And I'm familiar.
Are you?
Yeah, I am.
So there you go, right? So
Yep. And that's been brought to my attention in the past.
And again, like somebody who's making a difference for my kids, and she probably doesn't even know the difference she's making for my kids, but period equity. She's the one who brought that on my radar. And I know you're
right, and I just said so, and for obvious reasons, not an excuse, right? And thinking about period equities, this was only brought to my attention on my campus a year ago.
So interesting, right?
Only just a year ago. Just a year ago. That's how, right? I have my flaws and my issues too, but just learning about this work.
So my first experience with that is when I was teaching in Africa. I was teaching English at a government-run school in Africa, and girls wouldn't come to school for a whole week.
Wow.
Because they just couldn't. They didn't have products, right?
Yes.
And so this is happening, but this isn't happening just over in Africa. This is happening in our inner cities. This is happening because programs, state programs and government programs don't pay for period products. I mean, what the heck? It's craziness.
And I can imagine some folks out there saying, oh, Jennifer, here we go. Another liberal who wants the government giving handouts and doing too much work and everything.
No, it's about equity, right?
But you say equity, but not everyone believes in equity, and that's the challenge that exists here. Mm-hmm. And that becomes the problem too. If you had your if you could mobilize a community, right? Mm-hmm. And that's not easy to do. Mm-hmm. But if you could mobilize the community around some of the inequities, the things that need to be attention need to be brought forward to deal with whatever that may be the case, where would you start in this community? Would it be the community leaders? Would it be, are there some families that you know? I mean, where would you start in doing that work to really bring a change to a community that most likely probably believes that it's super progressive, doing everything the right way?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I would start with the people I just mentioned. I wouldn't start. Like I said, I think I started our dinner tonight by saying, your question to me when we were talking about I was coming on the show and talking about leaders in our community. None of them are political leaders, right?
Oh, that's nice. It's interesting too, because you don't have to be an elected official or a political person in order to enact the kind of changes that are necessary. Here's a question for you. Mm-hmm. Do you encounter, or have you encountered, white families, white kids, where they're doing it the right way? And you're like, I just want to put them on a pedestal for everyone to see. Ooh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So, white families that might not have a black or brown person in their family, but have an LGBTQ member, that are Jewish, that are something different. It's always what brings us together.
Absolutely.
I'm sitting here going, oh my God, do I know any straight white families that? Yeah, I do know a few. I know a couple, but mostly they've found this work or this idea that we need to change our communities and be more equitable because they have a family member that's experienced it.
Absolutely. And it's interesting too, right? Because we talk about empathy, we talk about folks who want to drive and bring about some kind of change, and it usually happens when you know someone. I was on social media recently, and there's some guy over in Georgetown, Massachusetts, and they're talking about the mural. So there's an article in the I think it was a mural in the Newburyport Daily News or something, and someone chimed in and stated, well, I can't believe that they're having this conversation. It's not about black people queer folks or any of this stuff. And I saw that comment, and I sat there and I thought, wow, I am sorry for you.
Yeah.
Someone didn't give you a hug. Someone didn't give this brother a hug, right? I mean, it's like Donald Trump. Right? Yeah. We already know his baggage, and no one hugged him enough. And you have people who just have not gotten the kind of hug. Rule of thumb. If you want someone to know how much you love them, and I'm not talking about intimacy here, you need to give them a hug for about 6 seconds, right? You need to give them a genuine kiss of affection, and you need to let them know you love them. But I believe that there are people who don't know what love looks like, in a sense that they bash queer folks, people of color, they vote against the plight and the rights of women, and they've not been engaged in that kind of stuff. And it's just so defeating.
Oh my gosh, it's so defeating. It's so defeating every day. Every day.
So
damn, can we end this on a hopeful note?
I am. Nope. So it's funny you mention that, because I'm a hopeful person.
I know
right?
you are.
So here's something I want to ask you.
Okay.
What are some of the things that excite you about this community, about Newburyport?
I do think there are people with good hearts that are welcoming, that just need to take that. They need that. I don't know whether it's an incentive or that person just to say, "Come on, let's go, let's do it, let's do it, let's do this thing." Because I think that's all sometimes someone needs, is just that little oomph, right? That little, let's go do this together.
Maybe you'll join me and help me do that.
Yeah, brother. I'm
right?
totally gonna do that. Yes.
I mean, I think that would be a lot of fun.
I think it would be a lot of fun.
And it's real.
As I said, co-conspirators.
Folks, thank you for joining us here at Race Matters. You're listening to WJOP LP Newburyport, Joppa Radio 96.3. So when I have guests, I don't want to be the person who brings the show to an end. So I'm going to put you on the spot again.
Oh, no.
That's what I do, right?
Okay.
I mean, folks, this stuff's not scripted,
No.
right?
And
nothing's scripted here. I mean, we're engaging in the intimacy of methodical conversation. You talk about the fact that you have black children, and in that experience, what's one of the joys that you've experienced with your children? Maybe a story or an anecdote that folks may not know
about my kids.
Yes, or about your relationship with them. That could be it could be informative.
Every day, Eddie, and I said this to you at dinner, my children teach me something every day about being black or brown. And it's not always bad.
Yes.
It's sometimes good. They embrace their queen. They embrace their hair, like my older daughter. So it's about it's those moments where I can go, oh, you're gonna rule this world. You're gonna go out and rock this world. So it's those moments that I feel like, okay, like they know who they are, and they're gonna go change this world. So if I can't do it, they're gonna do it.
Right, but I mean, clearly you're a great mom in the fact that you're modeling for them in terms of how to do this. You're developing young leaders, right? Building that confidence. It says and speaks volumes for you, so I'm going to embarrass you and compliment you here, because I think those things are important. When we talk about this idea of interracial love, right, and how we engage in the fact that when we're talking about family and love,
that's another episode too.
That is another. We'll come back to that. So hopefully this is not the last time you're here, but those things do matter. Folks, thanks for listening to Race Matters. It's been super exciting having Jennifer join me here and really engage in a great conversation. And
Eddie, I'm gonna interrupt you.
No, interrupt me.
I just want to say that you're one of the leaders in this community that my kids look up to. I'm not saying that because I'm here. I'm saying that because they watch Race Matters with me, and it's really important to have your voice and to be, you push the boundaries, and that's what we need to do. So thank you for that.
I'm blushing. I appreciate that. And you know what? I'm going to continue to push the boundaries.
Good.
I got folks like you. We're not done in terms of the work we're going to do here. People are too often consumed with things that are happening beyond the confines of our control, and yet they don't think about things within their own communities they need to focus on and work on. And that's what we're going to do, and that's why we're here. Hey, folks, thanks for chiming in here. It's been wonderful, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Peace out.